Recently, I learned some surprising facts about the current state of media and entertainment. Okay? What percentage of the top 10,000 titles in any online media store, Netflix, iTunes, Amazon, or any other, will rent or sell at least once a month? What percentage of the top 10,000 will rent or sell at least once a month? Most people answer about 20%. The answer? About 99%. Almost every single in the top 10,000 is rented or downloaded. Okay, Rhapsody, a subscription music service. Not only is every one of Rhapsody's top 100,000 music tracks streamed at least once each month, the same is true for its top 200,000, top 300,000, top 400,000, and as fast as Rhapsody adds tracks to its library, those songs find an audience, even if it's just a few people a month, somewhere in the country. Or I suppose, since it's a online service, somewhere in the world. The average Barnes & Noble carries 130,000 titles. Yet more than half of Amazon's book sales come from outside its top 130,000 titles. Thus, over half of the books that are bought on Amazon wouldn't even be found in the largest Barnes & Noble. Now, what does this mean? Well, in a new book, The Long Tail, today's guest, Chris Anderson, editor of Wired magazine, draws some provocative conclusions from that information in his new book, The Long Tail. Here's what he basically says. Hit-driven economics is a creation of an age without enough room to carry everything for everybody. Not enough shelf space for all the CDs, DVDs, and games produced. Not enough screens to show all the available movies. Not enough channels to broadcast all the TV programs. Not enough radio bandwidth to play all the music created. And not enough hours in the day to squeeze everything out through either of those sets of slots. But now, with online distribution and retail, things change radically. With no shelf space to pay for, and in the case of purely digital services like iTunes, no manufacturing costs, hardly any distribution fees, a hit and a miss are on equal economic footing. Both just entries in a database called up on demand, both equally worthy of being carried. Suddenly, popularity no longer has a monopoly on profitability. This is the essence of The Long Tail. Prior to taking over Wired in mid-2001, Chris Anderson was with The Economist for 7 years in London, Hong Kong, and New York in various positions, ranging from technology editor to U.S. business editor. Anderson's background, however, is in science, starting with studying physics and doing research at Los Alamos, culminating in 6 years at the two leading scientific journals, Nature and Science. I'd like listeners to get a feel for the people behind the work and the ideas, so how did you go from research at Los Alamos to Wired magazine and The Long Tail?
Boy, that's a good question. Well, actually, my kind of nutty background goes back further. I was a college dropout, college failout, and bicycle messenger playing in punk rock bands in Washington D.C. in the '80s, which is kind of a famous punk rock era.
Wow, hearing that, it sounds like the bigger question would be how'd you go from bicycle messenger to Los Alamos?
Well, exactly.
But keep it going.
As it happens, I wasn't a very good musician, so although the bands were good, I wasn't. So I quickly decided that my future probably didn't lie in either being a messenger or a punk rock musician. So I went back to college, decided to go hardcore and did physics. And then I was a generation that was inspired by, the Richard Feynmans of the world and Oppenheimers, etc. And but by the time I got out there in physics, it basically was too expensive to create the accelerators we needed to do the next work, and they canceled the really expensive one called the Superconducting Super Collider in Texas. And my whole class, my whole generation of would-be physicists kind of scattered to the winds, and most of them went to Wall Street to become quants and do trading. And I decided to go to the scientific journals to write about science, and then went from that went to the Economist, which is kind of writing about economics, and then freakishly Condé Nast asked me to take over Wired 5 years ago, when I find myself in the middle of pop culture and radical design and living in San Francisco.
So what ties that together for me, Chris, is that The Long Tail, which I'll let you explain better than I, is based on a graph, a power relationship, basically something that a math geek would come up with, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, now in retrospect, it all makes sense that the combination of sort of living in the long tail, being in punk rock bands, and not way outside the mainstream, and then the scientific background and then economics background, sort of the combination of doing the economics of fringe culture, the economics of culture as a whole, sort of allowed me to both sort of see the data and analyze it and recognize that the curve was telling us something, and then sort of culturally resonate with what it was telling us, which was that we're not all the same. We don't all want one-size-fits-all products. We are all niche in some part of our life, and now for the first time in history we have an opportunity to explore that to its fullest. So,
how did the long tail happen?
Well, you described that one data point, that 98% data point, my epiphany, which was just talking to companies about digital media companies about their data and understanding that there was demand for almost everything. Now, in different markets, there's that number is different, but broadly, the more they put out there, because they had infinite shelf space, because these music files are just entries in a database that cost almost nothing, you don't have to discriminate. You don't have to try to guess at what's going to be a hit and what's not going to be a hit. You can throw it all out there. And iTunes today has 2 million tracks, and there's probably 9 million tracks out there on the peer-to-peer networks like Kazaa. And so it's all out there, and now we can measure what people actually want. And what we find is that we were guessing wrong. We were guessing that they only wanted, the kind of hits to pass the formula test of studios and networks and labels. And the reality is, yes, they do like some of that, but they also like other stuff that doesn't pass the formula test. And now that it's all out there, we can measure that. And when you measure it, you plot the data, you get that very characteristic ski slope shape where you got the hits on the left at the very high part of the curve, and then it falls off very rapidly, and you got a long tail of non-hits. And that's just really the curve. The curve created the name rather than the other way around.
Right. Let me tell you that I saw you when you spoke at the Hollywood Hill, which is almost a year ago, I think, probably last fall.
Yeah.
And I've dined out on your idea, several times because it made an impact on me.
Royalties checks should go straight to me.
That's right.
5 cents for every mention. That's all I ask.
And the thing that I say, which is that, okay, everybody knows Blockbuster's up at the top. Few of them make a lot of money. Start going down, and then it ends. And what you discovered is this thing of that it doesn't end. And one thing you said we discovered that we were wrong, that people wanted other things. Partially it wasn't that folks were wrong. It was, and to see if I've got this right, it's that the people who were making decisions about what I stock or who I sign or who I publish, they had money concerns, and they just didn't, because when they were stocking, publishing, or putting out albums, CDs, there were costs involved. There was a point at which it wasn't that they didn't, that they felt they knew for certain no one ever wanted that, but not enough to make the money worth it to them.
Yeah, it's actually, you're right. It's both things. First of all, I mean, in part of my life, I'm way up there in the Blockbuster business. I'm a Condé Nast editor, Vanity Fair, Vogue, New Yorker.
You reject articles, paragraphs, everything, right?
Absolutely. So I have a limited number of pages in the magazine, and every month I try to guess at what people are going to like, what our readers are going to like, and we do our best to make it to commission it and make it great, and we publish it out there, and then after the fact we find out whether I was right or not. And a lot of the time I'm wrong. A lot of the time articles I thought would resonate didn't resonate, and I go out there and look at all the articles I didn't commission that did resonate because I just guessed wrong. And Hollywood works the same way. We like to think that it's science and that we're incredibly skilled, and maybe we are skilled, but there's a lot of randomness. It's a lot of guesswork.
Right, and another thing you get to see today, Chris, I would imagine, is which of the article that you sort of went, oh, okay, throw it in, gets sent around the net more popularly than anything else.
Absolutely. Every month there was some article in the magazine that I did not pay any attention to, did not think was going to be a big hit, that for some freaky reason resonates with the moment and becomes one of the most popular in the magazine.
Right, which in the old days would have been buried back in the back of the magazine, and you would never have had a way to find out that, and most of the people who didn't subscribe to the magazine would never hear of it.
Well, it still is buried in some little bit of the magazine, and doesn't have great prominence in the paper edition. But online, of course, there is no back.
Some of the information that sent you on this ride came from folks at Rhapsody and eCast and so on, but you also learned some of it from children and teenagers, didn't you? Yeah,
well, what I'm discovering is that the real change happening here is not so much technology. it's generations. The generation that's growing up with the iPod and growing up with TiVo and growing up with Google is used to having basically infinite selection available to them at any moment. So this is quite a radical change for those of us who grew up with Top 40 radio and the Megaplex and network TV. But for the kids who are growing up with YouTube, of course they have everything's available. Everything's one click away. Google knows everything. It's the Oracle.
Chris, let me cut in.
Entries on everything.
Let me cut in for 1 second. When I tell my nieces and nephews that when I was young, if you didn't see a movie in the 2 weeks that it played at the theater, you might never ever see it. They go, "What?" After seeing Shrek 50 times.
Right.
I mean, it's like the changes are mind-blowing, and from our perspective, I can't even imagine what it looks like from theirs.
And my kids have never they don't know what a channel is. They don't know what a station is. They don't know what a schedule is. The notion of when's it on, they don't even know what that means. It's always on. It's
That's
on when
right.
I want it to be on. And television's just a nutty business. To think that we put all this work into creating content, broadcast it for this tiny window, and then it vaporizes. It's gone. It's unavailable. Exactly like you described with movies. That is a sort of a scarcity effect, as we say in economics. That is just cannot last. And fortunately now the good stuff, people will copy it from their TiVo, they'll upload it to YouTube, and you can watch Jon Stewart clips or Colbert reports or whatever you want. And increasingly it's out there on BitTorrent, on YouTube, elsewhere. And you've got a generation that's grown up very used to getting their content that way.
Mm-hmm. And you also you gave an example when I saw you speak about machinima, which for those of people who haven't heard about it, tell briefly what that was. I think you said that whether it was your kids or some kids of friends of yours, that their favorite quote sort of movie was this thing. Tell the story.
Yeah, well, so their babysitter, who was 15, turned them on to a movie. Actually, it's an episodic serial called the Codex series, and the Codex series is a science fiction movie that has got good plotting. It's kind of it's computer generated, but it's really it's not bad. Great sound, good voice acting, etc. It was made in a video game. It's made in Halo 2. These by 4 17-year-olds in Texas who did it for free, uploaded it for free, and the ability to use video games, which everybody has and are quite sophisticated now graphically, as the sets and the actors and the scenes for any movie you might want to make. In other words, basically you write the script, you do the voice acting, but the video game, and then you manipulate the video game characters almost like puppets to act it out for you. This is a studio in a box. This is sort of Hollywood in an Xbox 360. And is available to everybody. And the thing about my kids is that it became their favorite movie. And the soundtrack to this movie, which they made in GarageBand on a Mac, became my 9-year-old's favorite album. And they don't distinguish between professional and amateur content. They don't care where it came from. This was downloaded from the net. The DVDs come that way. TV comes that way, but it's all available on menus from their kind of miraculous screen, which has access to everything ever made.
That's right. Everything in the universe is out there. And let me say two things. One thing you said was that when Codex hit like 20 episodes or something, it stopped being made. The reason was because its creators had graduated from high school.
Yeah, they graduated from high school and had to go to college.
Right. And the other thing is, for people who forget this, the root of the word amateur is love. Same as amour. And basically what an amateur means is someone who doesn't do it for money, but does it for love.
It doesn't mean that they're not talented. Doesn't mean they're not knowledgeable. Doesn't mean they're not skilled. It just means they're not motivated by money. And the whole rise of the blogosphere and YouTube and MySpace and Wikipedia and all this kind of stuff is the incredible power of people doing things for reasons other than money. They do it for reputation, for expression, for creativity, for fun. There's a lot of talent out there, and we all now have the ability to act on it one way or another. And you don't have to pay people to make great stuff.
Right. Let's switch now to look at what some of the impacts of this shift are. I'm going to ask you, what does it mean for different players? First of all, for the industry gatekeepers, record companies, film studios, television networks.
Yeah, a lot more competition. So I can tell you what it's like for us in the mainstream magazine business. And we used to compete with other magazines and newspapers. Now we compete with other magazines and newspapers, but also 27 million blogs. Who there are more of them, and each one of them knows more about their world, and many of them are good writers and incredibly informed about their subject matter. Many of them work for the companies that we cover, and they make us better in the sense there's more information out there. But they also compete with us for the audience. So
and you've got you're a monthly magazine, right? So you've got a plan well in advance. They are up to the minute.
Right. We have a website as well, so maybe if we move fast, we can move by the hour, but they can move to the minute. And there's so many more of them than there are of us. And they're a lot, and they're really, really smart. And collectively, they're smarter than any institution could be.
And don't they reach more than? Well, they certainly reach more than any single institution.
Sure. I mean, there's 27 million of them.
Yep.
Collectively, they reach more than any institution.
Right.
When you look now, you rank them all by their it's a service called Technorati that ranks them all in terms of popularity. And what you find is that there are blogs out there, Boing Boing or Daily Cause or Instapundit, that are more popular than the Chicago Tribune.
Yeah.
One guy blogging in his pajamas, a law professor in Tennessee, blogging in his pajamas, at night, has a bigger audience measured, in terms of, incoming links, which is the way we measure things, online, than an institution with thousands of employees.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if you caught it, but last night on Colbert Report, his word was wikiality.
Yeah, that was great.
And he actually changed the entry about his own show.
And then it was elephants, wasn't it? They were hacking the elephants.
Yes. Or he said, I used to say this. They used to say I said this. Now I'm going to tell them that I said this, and did it right in real time on TV. And, of course, now millions of people who didn't see it last night have seen it because somebody found it on YouTube and sent it to them. What does the long tail mean for producers?
Right. Well, actually, let's we can talk about industry verticals, sort of television and movies and music, and we can also talk about the different sort of levels. There's the producers, there's the aggregators, and there's the tastemakers, as I describe them. So, do you want to start with the verticals?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so the music industry is kind of ground zero of all of this. This is the one that's really digitized a decade ago, and they completely, they're being completely transformed by the new rise of the amateurs and these new outlets. And what you're finding is for them, everything a music label can do, to a rough approximation, can be done by a laptop. Make music, mix music, distribute music, market music, etc. You can all do it with your laptop. Now, maybe you can't do it as well as the label can do it, but the barrier to entry has fallen so low that anybody can do it, and many do. And you upload your music to CD Baby or MySpace or something like that. So the labels now have to say, well, gosh, they don't need us anymore. They can get out there on their own. And you've got the Arctic Monkeys and the Clap Your Hands Say Yeah, the bands that are coming up and becoming incredibly popular without a major label deal. So they say, okay, well, what can we do? What's our role in a world where everyone's got the key to the factory? And and their answer is, well, maybe we can take you to the next level of popularity. We can get you into Walmart. Maybe we can bring you a producer who can make your record sound even better than you can make it sound by yourself. Maybe we can help you with marketing, get you on radio for whatever good that is. Mm-hmm. So at this point, it's not an exclusive, access to market, but they have to sort of think of ways to do what people can't do themselves. And this means that basically the power has shifted. That they can't get the very favorable royalty terms they used to get. They have to compete. They have to, one of the stories I tell in the book is a band called Bird Monster. Bird
Monster, which your former assistant, who was the first person that I contacted to set up an interview, and then when I contacted you again recently when the book was coming out, they said, oh, he's gone, and tell the story.
Yeah, I know. You know how they tell you that, don't quit your day job?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes when you get really good, that advice changes.
Yeah.
So I lost him because his band became popular. They did the MySpace route. They uploaded it. They recorded it themselves, and they started to get traction. And the label said, "Yeah, we'd like to sign you," and they said no. They said no because what they realized is that at this stage in their development, they wouldn't get really favorable terms from the label, and that they were getting such traction on their own that they were going to release their first EP. You'd go on a national tour and get more popularity, and then when the labels come to them, as they have, the power will have shifted, and they'll be able to get much more favorable terms. And they can say, okay, now that we've already shown we're popular, you tell us what you can do for us, rather than the other way around.
Yeah. Let me share, because a lot of people, my listeners probably don't know this either. Even before this, in 1985, I produced an EP, self-financed, because I found out a record was something you could do almost as good as a major label for very little money, of Julie Brown singing Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun, I Like 'Em Big and Stupid, Earth Girls Are Easy. We put it out ourselves and proved that there was a market for it. Then what we ended up with was a studio record deal with Warner Brothers and a movie deal for Earth Girls Are Easy from Warner Brothers by having proven that there was a market.
That's a great story. So what you did, because you were smart and possibly a little bit lucky, then everybody
can do now. Okay, so that's telling us about now. Because we've got about 6 more minutes. A crucial piece in all this, people will kind of generalize from what we said about music to the other industries, but an important piece is filters. The filter used to be the A&R guy in music, the guy who could greenlight a movie at the studio, some network executive. Now the filters are?
They're all of us. So the filters are the crowd. It's word of mouth, and the internet is the world's greatest word of mouth amplifier. So the filters are, they're blogs, they are, they're Amazon reviews. There's ratings, there's ranking. Then there's the kind of the statistical filters, like best selling. So in any particular genre, sort of Afro-Caribbean jazz, there's a tiny little bestseller list that's not a bestseller for all of music, but just within that genre. That's measuring the collective opinion of the other people who are into this genre. Then there's the kind of collaborative filtering that if you liked X, you'd like Y. Then there's Google, of course, which is the ultimate filter, which measures collective opinion based on incoming links. And so all of these things are basically, it's gone from we professionals, we professional critics and gatekeepers, bring good stuff to your attention, to a army of amateurs are out there with time and subject matter expertise who are scouring the world for good stuff you might like. And if you can find them by their blogs or elsewhere, you can find that good stuff.
Right. So between people who really care and actually algorithms almost, right? That there's a new way of, in other words, that whole thing of if you like this, you might like this. So now that we've got availability, inexpensive production, inexpensive distribution, word-of-mouth marketing, filters that are actual real people rather than someone who says, I'm the filter because I have the checkbook, and we have all of this shift going on in what people think is worth having and so on. What's going to happen in the future?
Well, the short answer is there's going to be a lot more variety and diversity available online, available everywhere, actually. I mean, what we're seeing, I think, is not so much, a different culture. We're seeing the culture that was there all along, but was suppressed because we had these very narrow, windows in which to look at it. We are a diverse people. We have differing tastes. In some part of our life, we all go niche. And this is just this has always been true. It's just that the shelves of Walmart and the Megaplex haven't reflected it. So I think for the first time we're going to reflect the extraordinary cultural richness that's been around us all along. And I think that's very exciting, no matter how traumatic it might be for those of us at in the blockbuster business who have to deal with all this competition.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, who's it good for and who's it bad for? And it seems to me really it is basically bad for the people who controlled things before, who set the royalties, set the market, that sort of thing. But it seems to me it's good for almost everyone else.
I think that's right. So for producers, the people who can make music, who can make video, who have something to say and can blog it, it's never been a better time. You can now reach an audience, you can get out there, you can express yourself, and you're seeing this explosion of new voices. So there's more stuff out there than ever before. And for consumers, it's never been a better time because there's more stuff out there than ever before.
Okay, let me tell you, you've got 1 minute. Tell me why you said that this is true for all businesses and not just these ephemeral, digitizable ones.
Well, it's the digital ones are the best examples because it is so cheap to distribute digital files. But you're seeing it anywhere where you can lower the cost of distribution, you can offer more stuff. And let me give you an example. So one of the stories I talk about is Lego in the book. Lego is a company that has 70 kits in the toy store, Toys R Us or Target or whatever. But on their website, they've got 7,000 different variations from single parts to $300 Death Stars. And then if you want, you can design your own a kit, which they will ship to you, and then other people can buy the kit that you designed. So that what they're realizing is that you have a small number of products for the kind of the mainstream outlets, and then you've got a large number of products for the niches, for the adult enthusiasts, the people who are really into to the railroad line that has been discontinued in traditional retail.
You want to see all the repercussions, and in fact, you have the rules of it. Get the book, The Long Tail, Why the Future of Business is Selling Less or More, and then I suppose one can even learn more by going to thelongtail.com, where the blog keeps evolving, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
The conversation continues.
So the book is The Long Tail. The website is thelongtail.com. Thank you, Chris Anderson.
Thank you.